You're cute, Maddie. Hi, this is Van with Gather and Create, and I'm back in video 6 to show you how to cast off. So I've got my last row of stitches here, and just to make sure that I have enough yarn at the very end, I want to throw my yarn back and forth across the width of the blanket. And I should be able to throw that across there 4 times to just ensure that I have enough to finish casting off. And I've got 4 times across there, a little bit extra, and that's okay. But as long as you have 4 times across the width of your blanket, you should have enough to cast off. Maddie is helping me today. Yep. Okay, so I'm going to take my yarn and throw it down to the end of the table that I'm traveling to. Okay, so I've got this first stitch in my fingers. I'm going to be going with a 2-inch stitch now. Remember, we did the 2-inch stitch, the 3-finger stitch in the chain, and I'm going to be going back to that 2-inch stitch here as I'm casting off. So we wanted to make sure we have got our 3 fingers in there. All right, so now I'm going to be using my 2 fingers like a hook. So I'm taking my 2 fingers and I'm going to be taking them down into the next stitch to pick it up. So now I've got 2 stitches on my 2 fingers. I'm going to grab my working yarn and hand it to my 2 fingers there, and using my fingers like a hook, I'm going to pull it through that last stitch, and now I just cast off those 2 stitches down to 1 stitch. Again, make sure that you're doing the 2-inch size stitch here. Take your single stitch here and go down into the next stitch. We're always going down into to pick it up. And if you'll notice, I am not picking my blanket up from the table like this. I don't want to be doing that. I always want to be taking my fingers down into the next stitch to pick it up. So 2 fingers down into the next stitch. Now I've got 2 stitches on my 2 fingers. I'm going to hand the working yarn to my 2 fingers, pull that through and down to 1 stitch. So I'm going to just do this all the way across. Just make sure that you're doing that 2-inch stitch. And you can already see that gorgeous braid that just continues up across the top of your blanket, leaving that finished edge. And one thing to remember, when you're doing this and you're handing the working yarn to your 2 fingers in there, make sure that you're not leaving any slack back here. You don't want to be creating slack like that and then pulling it up through, because you'll leave these funny loops on the back. So always make sure that you've got that pulled, not tight, but just so there's no slack. Okay, and our last stitch. All right, Maddie. Okay, so now I'm down to 1 stitch. I've finished casting off my stitches, and now I need to tie off my blanket. So to tie it off, I've got this 1 stitch here. I'm going to grab the tail here, and here it is, and I'm going to pull it up through this 1 stitch, just like that. And now I want to tighten this so that the end of my blanket there is square with the rest of the blanket. Now you don't want to break your yarn off here. This is not where you want to break your yarn off. So I'm going to be gentle, but intentional, huh? And there we go. So that's as tight as I'm going to tighten that. So now we're going to hide this tail. You only need about a 12-inch tail. I'm just going to tear that off there. And I'm going to hide this by, I'm going to sew it underneath this top braid that I created. So there's no right or wrong way to do this. You're just hiding it. And I am just going underneath that braid, back and forth. I don't like to go into the braid because I don't want to, ruin that pretty edge. So I like to go just right underneath it, just like that. And this is the same way that you're gonna hide the tail from the beginning. We've got our tail down here, and you're gonna do the exact same thing with that tail. So once I've got it almost to the end, that's probably good enough. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tie it off on the back. So I'm just gonna find a good place to hide it. So right here, I'm going to go through this stitch or this loop right here, and I'm going to create a knot just like that, and again. Okay, and then I'm going to trim. Let me grab some scissors here. Okay, so I've got my knot tied, and now I'm going to trim very close to that knot. A little haircut there, and then I'm just going to hide that in the back of my blanket. Okay, so there is our blanket, and then of course we'd come down here and we would do the same thing to this end here. Okay, so that is how you cast off stitches.